Today I am delighted to speak with John Lawyer. John, you share a riveting tale of transitioning from military accolades to spiritual awakening. You act as one of several guides for Kishar, a non-profit online spiritual community for people to explore their own unique spiritual path. You are passionate about guiding individuals to discover and align with their higher purpose, navigating the journey from societal conditioning to conscious self-awareness. John, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you, Agi. I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
As I was telling you just before we started recording, I'm very excited for this conversation, and we will explore, among other things, we will explore higher purpose and the art of living aligned with your Dharma and more. Before we go there, can you share a pivotal moment from your transition from a military career to becoming a spiritual seeker?
For me, it was, for being involved, joining the military straight out of high school and being at war for the first 12 out of 15 years of my adult life, being part of that military industrial complex, it was this very dark thing over time. It starts to wear on you, it starts to kind of wear you down and kind of eat you up. And I think kind of being part of that darkness, seeing that kind of darkness, I think it helped me see more light in the world, which is, I think, a really great thing. And so it helped me learn about the contrast between light and dark, and there's balance in the universe, and that we have choices about whether we look into the dark or look into the light,
Was there any, let's say, milestone transition, something, because they are, those two things are very, I'm not sure, was that a smooth transition? I don't think that it was. So what tipped the scale? What made you decide that I need to change?
Well, I worked a lot. I was really dedicated to my job when I was overseas in combat zones, and I worked 100, 110 hours a week, 7 days a week, and for years on end. And so eventually it was not, I think eventually it wasn't sustainable. I burnt out completely, kind of like supernova, and I didn't have anything left. And so when I came home, I didn't know who I was. I was kind of completely lost because I was this person, right, that did this, like what I thought was this important thing. And I didn't know who I was outside of that. And I was kind of addicted to war, the like excitement and adrenaline of it all. The excitement of my job. And so when I came home, I was kind of lost for like 7 years, like just kind of wondering and trying to heal. And I realized over time that time actually helps heal. And I got into a little bit of mindfulness. I got into a little bit of that, and I didn't fully commit to it, and I wasn't really on a spiritual path. But that time of coming back and kind of being lost was definitely part of the journey that I had to take, and just figuring out what the world's about. And then COVID happened, and that was different. And that started to make me think a little bit differently, just the way that I looked at the world. And then I was only 39, but I had shingles on the left side of my face and in my eye. And I actually lost some vision in my left eye. And that was a pretty important event because it was pretty significant. And it was because I was so stressed, I think, is probably why it happened. And even though I lost some vision in my left eye, I think I gained vision from a spiritual sense. So I think that helped probably push me into that moment where I had this like profound understanding or kind of awakening that was like this like kind of instant thing one night where I kind of saw the universe as this one whole thing.
Did that just happen, or was it a result of some practice or anything else?
No, I was just laying in bed late one night. My wife was asleep, and it just hit me like a bolt of lightning. It was
Wow.
kind of eureka, you know?
Eureka, yeah, I suppose that doesn't even begin to describe it. Just so, what changed after that? I mean, what was the biggest thing that you changed after that night that was
My,
different?
my whole life changed. I mean, everything changed. I changed the way that I changed the way I ate. I changed the way I slept. I changed, just basics. But I mean, I changed the way that I saw the world. I stopped arguing with strangers on the internet. uh, I stopped arguing with family at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I got out of politics. I don't care about politics anymore. And it was very much a loving kindness that we're all this one thing. We're
Mhm.
all made up of the same stuff. We're all tied to, whether we're humans or plants or animals or rocks. We're all tied together we're all stardust, we're all energy. And so I started to meditate every day, and I knew that I kind of knew what my purpose was. I knew I wanted to go out and help people help themselves, like find their wholeness inside, whether they knew it was there or not, because it's there even if you don't know it.
Thank you. And you said purpose. So, John, let's talk about Dharma then, our higher purpose, and knowing what it is. I suppose it's a good starting point for this conversation. So, tell me a bit more about this.
I think each of us has a unique higher purpose in this universe, in this world. I think that it can change over the course of our lives.
Mhm.
And I think the first question we have to ask ourselves is, do we know what that purpose is?
Exactly.
And some people say, well, I don't know what it is. And how do I find it? There's different ways. Like, what do you love to do? What do you need to do? What do you want to do? What do you get excited about waking up and doing the next day? What's that? Maybe other people can help tell you what lights you up when you're doing it. And then when you know what it is, even if you just have an essence of it, is that higher purpose, that Dharma, aligned with how you're living your life every day? Is it aligned with your day-to-day routines and habits? Is it aligned with your job? That's a huge one, right? Is my purpose aligned with what I'm doing for work? Because we spend so much time working. Because suddenly, if you're working in something that's aligned with your higher purpose, then you're happy about it. You're joyful. You're like, oh, I get to go to work. And for me, because if you're not happy with what you're doing in life every day, if you're not aligned with your purpose, then you're obviously not going to be in a good place, but neither are the people around you. So you gotta, when you lift yourself up, you lift up yourself, but you lift up the whole world around you.
A rising tide lifts all boats, for sure. Well, I want to speak about alignment or living in alignment with your higher purpose in a moment. There was something you were saying about no. So my question was, how do we know that we actually know that this is the higher purpose? You did mention some, following your what lights you up, you said, and things like that. Is there are these stepping stones towards that? Is it that, and how does one really know? I suppose my question makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah, that's all part of it. I think a lot of it is, if you really want to look into what your purpose is, part of the process is also quieting things around you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of background noise in the world. We have all this stuff that we're listening to, our phones, our streaming, all this stuff, our computers. And so if you can just quiet uh, the background noise, and our mind and ego that is thinking and giving us thoughts all the time, it's trying to keep us alive. It does a really good job of keeping us alive, right? But it's overperforming. and it's throwing all these thoughts, feelings, and emotions at you that maybe you're not processing or that are racing. So it's quieting that background noise outside of you. And then when you can quiet that mind and ego inside of you and say, okay, what's the real voice? What's the voice of me outside of all these things that society has given me? You know, my parents gave me, my teachers gave me, my community gave me, and told me that I had to do this and I couldn't do that, or I should do the, you know, all these things. And, you know, you get rid of all that, you strip that away, and you start to ask that question, who am I? And I'm not my name, I'm not my job, I'm not my hobbies, I'm not my relationships. So who am I? And what do I want? What are my values? What are my beliefs? And then things start to come into focus.
It is that self-introspection and that journey, I call it a journey of self-exploration, because as you know, many people, if you ask them who are you, and they had to answer that question not by what they do or where they come from, where do they live, but actually the actual question, most people would have a very hard time to answer that question, and no one can answer that for us. It takes indeed the practice to look inside, whatever that involves, and it is just an expression to look inside, but you know, the inner work, if you want. I wanted to come back quickly to we were talking about let's say we know and we understand our higher purpose, then it is a matter of aligning our life, or align it in our day-to-day life, which sometimes it can be more challenging. Give me one practical piece of advice that the listener can take to, let's say, come more in alignment with their higher purpose in their day-to-day life.
Sure. I think a smaller one is, are you doing something every day that honors what your higher purpose is? You know, you got all these things that kind of pull at you in life. You know, you got kids and job and bills and all this stuff. But when you get rid of all that, like, are you doing something every day to make sure that you're living that authentic purpose that is yours? Even if it's not possible to quit your job and pursue this one thing that you want to do, are you doing something every day to honor that and get in touch with it? Because that will grow. So I think it's, you know, starting is this amazing thing. It's that the journey of 1,000 miles, first step thing. You know, it's cliche, but it's true.
It's true indeed. It's so true. I loved what you said. Are you doing something every day that honors your higher purpose? Tell me a bit more about this.
Yeah, it's this delicate thing. It can be something that takes 5 minutes. You know, for me, I knew what my higher purpose was. Just as an example, I knew my higher purpose. You know, when I kind of had my moment, I knew my higher purpose was to create this nonprofit online community where people could kind of have authentic, meaningful connection. So how can I honor that? Every day I did something to make that happen, even if it was only 5 minutes, and some days it was 12 hours, you know, but some days it was only 5 minutes, but it was every single day. And that's honoring yourself. And there's nothing better in the world that you can do than honoring and taking care of yourself. That is greater than taking care of anyone else, or, you know, because you're not good to anybody else if you're not honoring yourself.
I'm very glad to hear you said it, that you said it in exactly this way. You know, you said every day, even if it's 5 minutes, but it's every day. And this aligns, John, very much with my mission with the podcast, which is to inspire. To inspire is one thing, to empower, that's really the word I was looking for, to empower with the simple and consistent actions one needs to take to master themselves and create a life of purpose and fulfillment. It's this everyday thing that many don't realize. It's not one huge thing that, you know, the magic pill that will change everything. It's lots of small actions or behaviors or ways of thinking or whatever else over and over and over again. It's a journey, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And that's, I think, what it people can't really wrap themselves around that sometimes, because it feels like work. And I think maybe at first it's hard, but it makes your life easier. So it can be hard to start, but these things, because no one's going to come save you. No one's ever going to come make you happy or joyous. They're not going to make you have more health or have more wealth. None of that. Like, we have to do it for ourselves.
And that's a big realization for many people, to assume responsibility, ownership of the life, that we are not, life is not happening to us like we are, you know, something that moves around at the whims of life. It is, we are creators of it. Talking about this, let me ask you, I heard you talk about the stream of unconsciousness and society's pull into that. You mentioned something earlier before, but tell me a little bit more about the importance of understanding, what this is, and realizing that maybe we are in it. Not maybe, we are in it.
Yeah, the stream of unconsciousness is this idea. That's what I call it. But it's like society has all these things they want you to be and do. They want you to get on the conveyor belt, and they want you to go to school, get a job, be part of the system, and not question anything, and just live the status quo, live what everyone else is living. And almost this way is almost kind of like a zombie. It can be a kind of semi-warm thing. It can be something that, I'm watching TV, I'm doing this stuff. I'm just kind of in this like habit of this kind of grayed out, kind of mundane thing. But if you stop and you step out of that stream of unconsciousness, get off that conveyor belt, and look around, it's a very colorful world all around you. It's very beautiful. And then you can decide who you are. You can decide what you want to believe, what you are. Separate from everything that you've ever been told, and decide, I'm going to approach life with this open mind and decide what works for me. And what works for person A isn't going to work for person B. It's going to be different, and that's okay.
Of course, the next natural question, because it's nice to hear you say it like that, but how does one step out of this pool? Because a stream of unconsciousness also implies that we are not conscious that it is happening. So can you give me one or two, again, let's say practical things to help, step out of this? Or the matrix, it's called in another way. I think it's the same thing.
No, yeah, matrix. Yeah, I think it starts with awareness and intention. You have to think to yourself, as I'm moving through my life each day, each moment, am I in that moment? One, am I living that moment? Am I not tied to the past? If I let that go, am I not tied to the future and have anxiety about that? And am I aware and intentional about where I am, where I'm headed, what direction I'm pointed? So awareness and intention are these powerful things that, again, they can sound like they take a lot of work, but when you start becoming aware and you start being more intentional, it actually will make your life easier. Because then you're living for you and not for anybody else, and not for anybody else's purpose. It's kind of, people talk about main story syndrome sometimes, like it's a bad thing, but like, you got to look at it from a different perspective. Be the main character. Have main character syndrome. Write your own story. Don't live someone else's story. Live your own story.
Awareness and intention. That's so important. John, tell us about Kisar, your spiritual community. What inspired the creation, and what's the name? What does the name signify as well?
The name is the Sumerian goddess of Mother Earth, or Gaia. So, and the name also it has a double meaning of representing the line on the horizon, which is, I think, that beautiful journey we're all on, even if we don't know it. We're all on a journey. And, you know, I wanted to create this with our other co-founders. I want to create this nonprofit space where, like I said, in the digital age, I still think there's a space for authentic, meaningful connection, just like you and I are having right now, online. And we can make that choice to reach out and connect with people. We don't have to have this lonely journey where we're by ourselves. And I wanted a place where people could share their journeys, where I could share mine, and we could practice our individual beliefs, philosophy, faith, whatever you want to call it, side by side, but it doesn't have to look the same. And, you know, you can practice what you want. I can practice what I want. We can talk about it. We can ask questions. We can seek answers together, but still be empowered within ourselves to live the truth that we're meant to live. And how do we then, and that's why I like your podcast, but how do we then take that spiritual path and idea and concept, and how do we align it with that crossroads of the real world? Because most of us aren't going to be monks in the Himalayas, right? So how do we live that every day?
Yes, and that I suppose it's also a misconception for many people that spirituality has to do with being a monk in the Himalayas or a priest or whatever. Spirituality is what we do with our everyday moment.
Right.
These moments create our life, and whether we follow what we were talking about earlier, the higher path or the purpose, or not, the spirituality permeates everything. So it's not in the monastery that it happens. It can happen everywhere, in the office, in your, I don't know, any interaction with anywhere. And you know, now that we talked about the term spirituality, I would like to hear your thoughts about, let's say, the commonalities, but also the differences between spirituality and personal development. So I'm very curious to hear what you think.
Well, that's a great question. For me, spirituality is about a connection to the oneness of everything, and the connection to something beyond our physical and kind of mental self. And I think it's intricately connected with personal development. I think anyone can be spiritual: atheist, scientist, you know, spiritualist, someone who studies or follows religion, artists, creative types, because that's all, to me, that's all very spiritual. And if we're in touch with that soul, that spirit part of us, and we align that with our body and our mind, then our mind, body, soul are in alignment. We talk about this holistic approach, right, of mind, body, soul, and health. And so I don't think that we can necessarily live our fullest life in the personal development sphere, building habits, building routines, reaching goals, if we're not in touch to an extent with that idea of our place in the universe. I believe we are the universe. So that makes that easy for me, because I think our place in the universe is that we are the universe. But, you know, I think for each individual, they have to decide what their place in the universe is. And that helps their habits, that helps their routines, that helps their lifestyle, their job, their relationships, their sleep, all this stuff.
Is there a particular practice that you recommend, or even that comes to you now that we're talking about this, on, let's say, going deeper into one's spiritual journey? And I know it's a general question.
Yeah. I think that's going to differ for individuals, but I think one thing that works is meditation, and meditation can be anything. It doesn't have to be, you know, cross-legged on the floor or anything. Meditation could be anything. So it's that introspection. And then I think there's also, beyond that, there's conversations with yourself where you're kind of having a more self-inquiry and introspection. That can involve journaling. You can talk to yourself through writing. I think there's affirmations. I think the verbal word has this great power. if you speak to yourself in the mirror out loud, that's power. You'll live that. If you're doing that, you'll live that. You'll do whatever it is that you tell yourself to do, or that you say I'm gonna do. And so there's, I think building a ritual or building a routine or a habit that ties you in, all spiritual, all ritual is this bridge between our concrete existence and our spiritual self, that self with a capital S. So, but those are some ideas that people can start with.
Thank you. And I really liked, and I will take it back, because you mentioned, meditation, journaling, mirror work, but it was the routine, that the repetition of it. We were talking earlier about, you said, do it every day, even 5 minutes, and I was saying, the simple, consistent actions. It is somehow I felt like I needed to emphasize that for one more time, because it is so important. John, I have a couple of last quick questions to ask you to wrap it up. But before I do, please share with the listener how can they connect with you, and also a little bit more about the Kisar community.
Sure. We're a nonprofit spiritual community online where people can kind of come and have conversations with each other. We have events, and there's meditations and teachings, and people can kind of take what they want, and also offer individual spiritual guidance and coaching as well. It's a warm place and it's friendly. It's at kishar.org. It's KISHAR.org. And that's kind of the entrance to the community and stuff. And they can find our socials. We have a pretty cool YouTube channel as well. So that's who we are.
That's great. Thank you. And so there are two quick fire questions that now that I'm thinking about it, and I will share this with you. I don't usually share that, but I have been, now that I think about it, I have been asking these questions for almost 4 years now, and they kind of remained at the end of the podcast. So that's just my own self-reflection now that I realize it. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
It means taking care of myself and being there for myself and loving myself. I think it's about being the best version of myself that I can be for myself.
And hypothetically speaking, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say keep being kind and follow your natural universal intuition.
That's great. John, I want to thank you very much from my heart for this wonderful conversation we had today. I believe, apart from it was very enjoyable, but apart from that, I believe there were some deep and important messages that went through. Some, I'm delighted that we had that. I want to wish you all the very best with your mission and your fulfilling your higher purpose. Before we to conclude, I would like to end with some parting wisdom or something actionable emerging from the conversation, because I always believe it is good to actions are the things that will change, not the theory. So what's one piece of advice or one simple practice that the listener can incorporate into their life today or tomorrow?
I would say slow things down. You have more time than you think. So use that time. Don't chase perfection, and love yourself.
Thank you.